You're better looking in person.
Do I say thank you to that? I'm not quite sure.
We call Marin in Human Resources. All right, so here's what the press release says. May 3rd. Let's see. Establishing on President Trump as attempting to coerce local authorities to commandeer local jurisdictions to carry out duties of the federal executive branch while punishing those who dissent. So you have joined with San Francisco and Portland and many other jurisdictions. You file this thing on the 27th of February. So you don't like the fact that the federal government has a problem with sanctuary cities.
What I do have a problem with is being coerced to withhold federal funds, the threat to withhold federal funds, and an issue about local problems and local control of how we tell our police to do their work.
Yeah. So the history of it is there's this really strong high wall that blocks federal government from coming in and telling local jurisdictions how they could do the police work, right? The only way they can punch through that wall is like with a consent decree, which they did in 2012. Then they can punch in there, and then the federal government can get in there and get involved. But primarily, and all states have this, and all cities, the federal government is not allowed to be involved in how you spend money when it comes to fighting crime in a city. That's it. But you know that the federal government, no matter who's sitting behind the desk, they always use the big hammer of federal dollars will be withheld if you don't do the things we want to do. You don't want to have the speed limit at 65 or you want to have it at 75. You're not going to get any federal, highway dollars. So they do this all the time, right? So are you joining in saying that it's because we're a sanctuary city? Is part of it a big sanctuary city thing, or is it just more you don't like to be forced into having to make decisions based upon what the President of the United States wants?
Well, it's lawful to be, we call it a welcoming city. It is lawful to be that. 4 out of 5 federal appellate circuit courts have determined these laws are lawful.
Yeah.
And so we are compliant with federal law, as we also control our local police officers.
How much of this is political? Because you're up for re-election. You got this guy, Rory O'Sullivan, up against you, right? You defeated, what was her name? Thomas, what was her name? The person who ran again? Thomas Kennedy, who said all sorts of stuff like, I got one of her quotes right here. Thanks to the heroes for setting children's jail on fire. I have not taken any of these anti-bias trainings, but I sure hate this country. So you ran against her and you crushed her because you came in there, and I was a big fan. I still am. You're like, look, we need law and order. We got to get the city back in shape. And you said, I'm going to come in there. I'm going to make sure I hold people accountable. I'm going to boost the funding to make sure that we have enough prosecutors. We get the jails, get the space, get these people off the streets, get them where they before the court, hold them accountable. Law and order. And Seattle really, as crazy as it is that sometimes, was like, yeah, Ann Davison, good for you. I mean, because you were the person that seemed to have the voice of reason on this. You risk possibly people that 80% of Americans don't like sanctuary cities. They think it protects criminals. So do you feel you have to kind of thread the needle on this? Like, is it hard for you to take this position and possibly alienate some people that see illegal immigrants in the state of Washington committing crimes and not being deported?
You're right about one thing, which is that...
Oh, one thing? Wow. I said a lot.
I know you did say a lot, but you are right in that I ran because I saw our laws not being respected in Seattle.
Right.
So what I do stand for is that the rule of law is paramount and it applies to everyone and everyone must follow it. And that it does include our president.
Yes.
And so when I'm talking about that is about people who also do criminal acts. But what I am saying is as I'm trying to do improvement of public safety, working closely with the mayor and city council, it does not help to withhold federal funds. Those things are also tangentially related to things like infrastructure for earthquakes,
sure,
et cetera. It's not all about this. What we do, I'm at the misdemeanor level, and what I'm talking about for improving public safety is I need to have victims who will be willing to speak to law enforcement. I need witnesses who will participate in investigations so I can do that part.
Right.
That is significant for me. I am not a felony prosecutor. I am a misdemeanor prosecutor, and I don't see what I'm saying as anything contrary to what I've always stood for, which, again, is that the law applies to everybody, and everyone should be accountable to it. Again, because it is lawful. 4 out of 5 federal circuits have said these laws are here. Our Seattle ordinance has been in place since 2003.
Right. So the president's point, and those that don't like sanctuary cities, that you can have a sanctuary city, but work with the federal government to get illegal immigrants that have committed crimes in your state out. So when ICE sends a detainer, and says, listen, we know you've got that guy. We're going to be there in 6 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours. Please don't release him because he's committed a crime there, but he's also come into this country illegally. We want to come get him. And the problem seems to be that in sanctuary cities, like, no, we're not going to do that for you. For whatever they said, well, you don't have the manpower, we don't want to spend the money on it. But sometimes it seems like they are kind of giving the middle finger to the federal government, and they don't want ICE to take this person. I don't understand why, but that seems to be the rub, that they're saying, if you could just hold the guy and let us come get the guy, wouldn't you want him out of the country if he's committed crimes?
I mean, I'm not going to say what other jurisdictions are saying, but for us, again, our ordinance was put in place in 2003 in response to after 9/11.
Right.
And so when I'm talking about public safety from this standpoint, we comply with judicial warrants. That needs to be stated. That does happen. When judicial warrants are there, that happens. We comply with federal law.
Right.
What I'm saying then as...
But the judicial warrant is different, right? Because ICE doesn't always do a judicial warrant. Sometimes they'll just do, they'll ask for a retainer. They don't do a judicial warrant. They'll say, hold them. We want to come get them. We believe this guy's in the country illegally. And by the way, he just killed a trooper traveling 112 miles an hour. And he's there. He's committed all these other crimes as well. We want to come get that guy. So hold that guy rather than letting him go and then making it more dangerous for us to try to go get that guy somewhere else. It's just this agreement that wouldn't everybody be safer if somebody who snuck into the country and then also committed crimes, that person would be removed?
Well, I am saying, again, that the rule of law matters, that it should be, everyone should be accountable to it. I'm not quite sure where you're saying we should hold
rule
that.
Of law? But the rule of law would also involve, there is a federal law, right?
Absolutely. Right. That's what I just, and there's also case precedent. The Ninth Circuit has decided this law is lawful. The Ordinance of Seattle is lawful under the Ninth Circuit, which is what is federal law according to us. So what I'm saying is, where are you proposing that they be held? We don't run a detention facility in Seattle, so I'm asking where.
If you have, you have the person, he's in jail. They've got him, and you could take somebody like that guy, what's his name? Santos, who 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 crimes. The guy that killed the trooper, Trooper Gadd.
I went to his memorial service, so
right.
I do. I'm
so
very
you know,
aware
so
of his
the wife was
service.
there. I think the kid was upstairs.
It was enormous, and it was very moving.
Very moving.
It was tragic. Absolutely.
Did you talk to anybody there at the memorial service? Did they say to you, Ann, these are the types of people we want to get out of this country? Did the sanctuary cities come up at all when you were there?
I didn't speak to people about that. That was a while ago. But again, the point is that is not what the city of Seattle, which is I'm the attorney for the city.
Right.
That is not what the space that we're in. You're talking about probably at the county level. You're talking about people who run detention facilities who would hold somebody for those types of things.
Okay.
I'm talking about the municipal ordinance, which was passed in 2003, again in response to 9/11. And when we're talking about what our officers have to do that are there for public safety, and what we do as a city is to say we're trying to combat crime. 80% of the crime in the city of Seattle is misdemeanor crime.
Yeah.
And I need to be able to have witnesses and victims to know that victims of crime, right, are at the center of the public safety conversation. And to me, that is super important. And then what are we wanting to have our officers do, which is build community trust so that they can do those investigations that they do need to do when they do come to that level.
Right.
That's not my space.
Where is the study? I saw one. It was out of Texas. They did a study on citizens coming forward, illegal immigrants coming forward, reporting crime. And they looked at, it was in Texas, I think they looked at it from a number of months, and what they found was it was just too small of a study. So then the group of people, the Criminal Victimization Survey, then did a study. National Criminal Victim Survey did a study, and they found that actually illegal immigrants, or people in this country illegally, were more likely to report crimes than citizens of the country. 62% more likely to go to police for violence, 60% for serious crimes, higher than the citizens. So the study, the idea that reason we have a sanctuary city is because, well, if they would feel intimidated and they wouldn't go and report a crime because they were afraid they would be deported, I don't see any evidence that supports this. I see the one study that came out of Texas, but the other ones say, no, it's actually more likely that they will report crimes. So again, you didn't set it up. You didn't establish this thing. You have to be the one.
My job is to defend the laws of the city of Seattle.
I know. That's put you in a tough spot because, that's their law. So what do you hope to have happen from this? You don't like the fact that the federal government is going to withhold funds. You need that money in order to be able to fight crime here in the city of Seattle. So what will come of this? So with the lawsuit that's in place, what are you hoping to have happen?
Well, the parties have asked for declarative relief and injunctive relief so that those funds will be released.
Yeah.
We're monitoring those in real time with departments across the city to see if anything has been withheld. For example, I have one in my office to get an investigator for domestic violence. So I want to make sure I get that money so I, again, can continue to help with the public safety issues that are here in the city that are still significant.
Right. So, you're a lawyer, you've been involved in this sort of stuff. There's always negotiation. How could you negotiate with the federal government? What would you say to them? Like, what is their concern? It's always bringing the two parties together. You've been involved in these mediations.
It absolutely is.
Right. So where would you, rather than having this thing roll through the courts and then we end up right back in the same thing, and you want to save the money, I understand that. Like, what would you hope? What would you be able to offer to their side so that they would pull back on some of the big hammer that they're going to hold back that money from you? What do you think you could possibly offer that they would be like, well, okay, if you do this or do that? There must be some negotiation in there.
John, that's probably the best question I've been asked in a long time.
Thank you. Yes.
So
we saved that, by the way.
He reveled in his colleagues'
I did.
a validation there,
Yeah,
John. But
thank you.
if more people really ask that type of a question, I think we would get farther along. What I do see, sadly, in politics is people want to be extreme and want to create opposition and make it us versus them.
Yes.
And I would talk to the everyday listener of your show and say, please try to self-restrain yourself from going to your far corner that you feel inclined to go towards.
Yes.
Drop the rhetoric that's coming from the opposite side and think about what is the best way to make the systems function together.
Right.
Because we have to do it at the local level. I'm at the bottom of the government hill. And what I do at the bottom of the government hill, the municipal level, everything rolls downhill. And we have to do it here with people within our community that we meet along the sidewalk, that we ride the bus with. They're real people for us, and they're real problems because local government actually solves most of the problems in people's everyday lives, or don't, right?
Right.
We're one or the other. But we do need the federal government to do its responsibility. Maybe that's a question for them to decide how to do and how best to judge it, what they do. But they need to have measurable outcomes. They need to be able to be responsible with what they're doing. To me, policy should never be partisan. It should be balanced. This is a nuanced issue that requires a lot of dedicated voices. And when people want to just be on absolute one side or absolutely other, it is, you're right, not the right way to go. That's why I'm trying to educate with what I'm saying, which is, again, it's lawful for us to have the Seattle Ordinance that was passed in 2003 because 4 out of 5 federal circuits have said it is lawful.
I get it. So if to negotiate is, and you're right, rather than both people getting in their trenches.
Because you've added to it by your questions, which is like, I'm releasing so-and-so and so-and-so, and I'm not. We don't run a detention facility. I'm not a felony prosecutor. I'm a misdemeanor prosecutor. So I make 80% of the crime, again, is misdemeanor crime in the city of Seattle. We need to make sure we're seeing a reduction of that and have those participants.
I know, but when the listener hears sanctuary cities, what they hear and what they see is, here's this guy who broke the law, came into the country, and then rapes a 12-year-old, or domestic violence charges, driving drunk, all of it. And then they see, I think it was just last week, I think Comers and a bunch had, I think the mayor of Boston was there, Denver was there, New York was there. And they were defending sanctuary cities. And they were saying, yeah, but the thing is that you catch these people, and then when ICE says, hey, just hold them, we're going to be there in an hour, don't let them out into the parking lot, let us come get them. But then the idea is, no, we're a sanctuary city. The concern is we don't want to scare anybody, but you don't have any statistics. I'm not saying you particularly, Ann, but they don't have the real numbers to show that people are not afraid to come forward. They are willing, even if they're illegal immigrants. But again, it's you get in one group gets in one trench, the other gets in the other trench. I think if you come across like the famous Christmas Day on World War I or World War I, where they actually met in the middle of no man's land and exchanged Christmas gifts in the sense of just for a moment for both sides to come together, said, how do we have a safe community? Because that's basically your job. How do I make sure that the person walking down the street feels as if they're safe? And if they're not, the person that did something to them will be held accountable, right? Because that's where you work, the bottom of the hill. Is that where you are again?
That's how I say it. We're at the bottom of the government hill because if people have higher responsibility, larger scopes that they have, they can pass it down to the next person in line,
But when you're the bottom
we're the
of the
bottom.
hill,
We have
right.
nobody to pass it off to.
Okay.
So that's why, again, when I talk about how we instruct our law enforcement officers to conduct theirs, there's no one else to pass it off to.
Right.
We really are it. And so we also have to comply with state law. So there's a variety of things we have to comply with. But what I'm saying is our ordinance, I think, is something that allows for that balance. It was not done in response to anything other than people in our community wrongly targeted post 9/11 and to make people feel safe in that time period because there was a lot of fear at that time. And when people are afraid, they often make, like you're describing, when people are afraid that this is happening, what you just described, then the thing is to start to not give people the benefit of the doubt in the space. And I'm saying, just hold up a bit, try to emotionally calm down, and then let's have a conversation of how can the systems actually function together. I think that they can, but again, my job is to defend the laws that are on the books for City of Seattle, and this is, I'm telling you about our law specifically.
Got it. You know what we're going to do? We're up against the clock, and this is where I beg you to stay. Can you stay? Because here's our, I know. Well, checking the watch. Maybe, because here's what I want to do. I want to talk to you about the fact that you also want to enlarge your staff. But I want to talk about all your successes. I also want to talk about your successes. Because
wow, thank you.
No, I'm serious. Oh, stop looking at your watch.
No, we can stay a long time.
Because now we can stay. Here's why. When you got in there, you really had to push hard against a force that seemed to not care about the real victims of crime.
Yes.
They saw the perpetrators as the victims, and you were like, nonsense, we're holding this person accountable. And I realized at that point, some of these things are completely out of your hands. Oh, we don't have enough space in the jails. We can't hold them. Or the person's got these other problems, so we can't hold them. So you're doing the job. The prosecutors do the jobs. The judges may or may not do their jobs. But ultimately, I want you to speak to the fact that you look into the eyes of the victims, not the person that we assume is the victim. They committed the crime because of their mother didn't breastfeed them or something. But you have stories of people that needed justice. You saw that. You got in there. That's what you ran on. That's what people were really proud of you to do. It's an uphill battle. I want to talk to you about that. Will you stick around?
I will.
Oh, good. Whew. So bringing everybody a bit to speed here. So you guys are joining with San Francisco and Portland that you are filing a suit against the Trump administration. You don't like the fact that they're basically saying, hey, if you don't do something about this sanctuary city stuff, we're going to come down and start to withhold funds. How much money altogether from the city would be withheld?
It's $307 million is what we have for 2025.
Okay. And what's your budget? What do you guys run on?
My specific one, we're in the low 40s.
Okay. Speaking of your budget and your office, you're also you're hiring over there.
I did have to go and ask City Council President Sarah Nelson for, which will be a formal request to all of City Council for additional staffing because it is a lot to monitor. We've had almost 100 executive orders so far just since President Trump was inaugurated. That we're just at under 6 weeks. I'm losing track of time, but I think that's
it's very fast.
It's very, very fast. It's a lot of things. There's a lot of issuing, then retracting, then changing. So we do need to monitor that. We also are monitoring all the litigation across the country while we do the rest of our work, right? Which can't leave unattended. So I have asked for that. I was fiscally conservative in what I requested in the initial ask because I don't want to. We're in a place from a budgetary standpoint as in our city, so I'm wanting to be very respectful and mindful of that. So I've asked for just 2 additional staff right now to add to our internal federal response team, and then we'll have to monitor to see what the cadence is of the administration as it goes forward.
Right? Did you you have people because you joined the party of Lincoln as a Republican? You weren't for a while, and then you became a Republican. Do people try to hang Trump around your neck every once in a while?
I mean, people call me all kinds of things, but again, I'm not about partisan ideology. I am about the rule of law, and I'm a problem solver. And I get really fed up with people who don't want to get problems moving along and want to be some of the obstacles to get things done. So I really just, and that's really where I put my skill set to use.
How is it difficult? You've been in this for a while now. How do you stop your heart from getting hardened?
I have real conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take life as full of interruptions that get me off schedule, but they're opportunities, and I try to really focus on them.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see people maybe that are alongside our roadways, and I see them the next day, and they're the next day, I then make a point to try to go and interact with them and understand their story and understand how did they get there and what is not working and what social safety net has failed so that they are there repeatedly day after day. So I don't think I'm at risk of ever having that, not as a mother, not raising children in this city, trying to explain things to them as they witness how we problem solve or how we don't problem solve very well. And really, that's why I decided to go into seeking public service. It was not something I wanted to do. I think you may know in my early adult life, I wanted to do crisis relief work. So I worked in a refugee camp on the border of Cambodia where people were fleeing the Khmer Rouge and Civil War. And so...
Wow, how long did you do that for?
It wasn't a long time, but it was long enough to really understand that even my translator's son had been born in that camp. And they really were the epitome of homeless. They could not go back to Cambodia. It was not safe, but neither were they allowed to be released and to live into Thailand or any place else. So when I think about that and I think about how we have sometimes left people, you just did an ad for somebody, excuse me, about longevity. And I think about we leave people in addiction and we leave people on meth maybe for so long. And the longevity of their mental health is at risk. They're not going to be able to be recoverable if they are exposed to meth for so long. It goes through the blood-brain barrier. We failed, right? And we've given my kids and everybody else their generation long-term care tickets for people. So this is why accountability really is important, because we do need to understand how systems interact. And these are flags of where we can see when they come across our system, the criminal justice system, as a victim or defendant, we do need to understand how did this get to this place, right? And we will be better off served in the future at helping our future selves if we understand it now and the humanity of it, right? And not lose the humanity in the systems, but the systems are there to help us all live in close proximity. But we can't get mired down in individual stories all the time where the system doesn't work, but we have to understand its impact and where it needs to serve. You
ran as... it wasn't your term, but it would be, law and order, right? People have a problem with that, especially some people in Seattle. I think 40% of the people voted for your opponent that was all for getting rid of police and everything. But you get in there and said, no, somebody needs to be held accountable. We're going to make the system work. And you got voted in Seattle, which is amazing. As a Republican, people are like, wow, I can't believe it. So you step in there. You're in there with law and order. Now you have to walk this fine line because some people start to look at, well, it's too tough, right? It's the idea of how accountable do you make somebody for their actions? How do we help them make better choices, but how do we also not coddle them, right? At some point, they have to step up and they have to walk with us in order to have a better place. So you get into the whole stuff of not you, but the system gets into something like, harm reduction. Should we give people needles and do this? Should we not sweep them out of homeless camps? That's where all of a sudden you get sort of that very touchy-feely, very open liberal Seattle who wants to just let that person be where they are. And then other people say, no, we think more of you. You can be better than you are. We can help you with that sort of thing. You got to get the funding for all of it. But it gets into a philosophical battle, right? It's a weird dichotomy of, you care, but you can care too much. But how do you put these actions in so this person can have a better life? So as you step forward, you're going to have to balance a whole bunch of stuff. You're going to have this lawsuit going on. Then you're also going to be running again for this position. I assume you want the job again.
I do. I'm not done. Absolutely not done. I think there's a lot more we can do to improve public safety. And I do think when I talk about that we do need to have our laws matter, they need to be enforced. It is, again, for everybody because we live in close proximity. We're not going to grow land. So we all have to be able to follow the laws so we can all get about our business and take care of our families. And we have economy growing. I'm
going to give you, it's a question my dad would ask. So 0 to 10. There's no right answer, just purely feeling. Where was the city of Seattle when it came to law and order before you got in there, and where do you think it is now?
I would probably give us a 1 when I came in. I think we were really not able to do that. I think now we're probably a 6, close to a 6.
That's good.
But I'm impatient, and I really do think we can have more improvement. But again, it is a balanced approach.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
It can't be one extreme or the other.
No, it's slow, incremental changes. Once people see that, that worked, and then you can, the next step goes with it. There we go. our Seattle City Attorney, Ann Davison. Thanks for sticking around.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you can talk about how we did get the booking restrictions relief, which was one thing we could do to help our law enforcement officers.
Oh.
It was significant.
I know.
It was significant. It was from COVID, and that was the one thing they said they needed to be able to be responsive to community at the moment. And so we helped make that happen.
So we're going to get from a 6 or a 5.7 up to a 10.
That's right.
Okay.
And I may come back and even talk to you about it.
May. Oh, but you know who's not going to make the decision? Tim's not going to make the decision. It's going to be all up to you,
All up
Ann.
to me.
All up to you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, there she goes.